right. So here we are. We're recording now. Thank you, Elle Bradley, for being here. I am so excited to be having this conversation with you. I saw you do an interview. The first interview you did was Charlie Freak a while ago. And my initial wow response was, you were just so, it was like as if you had already integrated everything that he was sharing and were not so alarmed by it. I mean, when I first came to Charlie Freak and Colleen's work, I was really like shocked, surprised. I went through all of the cognitive dissonance and things that we go through. But I think perhaps it has to do with your background, and I really want to get into that today, and your career as a psychotherapist, right? So I perhaps that gave you a little bit of a head start or something, but for me to see women like yourself and men too, having those conversations when I was really afraid to do so really inspired me to keep going, because I could see the energy sharing and I could see the love and I could feel the love. And that's really what I do in my life is I'm running around the world telling everybody only love is free. I'm a Course in Miracles student, and I share that information with others. And so that's what keeps me going. But it's the initial shock that I want to speak to. And I wonder if you went through that yourself, or how it is that you came to this information and came to really accept it as the truth. And because it is really altering. It is.
Yes, it is. And I want to thank you, Marie, for having me on the show. I'm so happy. It's great to hear that you were inspired by that, because one never knows how they, are received by other people. And I really feel great about that. And I didn't realize that it looked like I had integrated that material. But I think that I have. Just to answer your question, I had been studying the New World Order and secret societies and the Jesuits long before COVID. And it even put out a video and some materials on that particular topic and Satanism and all of this kind of stuff. So when I first heard Charlie and Colleen, all of it just resonated with me. And it wasn't a matter of me grappling with it. But I think that is the experience most people are having. It was more, oh, wow, somebody's speaking my language. Because before meeting Colleen and Charlie and Sasha and all of the truth community that I've been talking to, I was always the person on the outside. I could bring these things up and people like, oh, that's very interesting, but they really didn't want to go too far with it. Weren't really sure what they thought about it. And it was usually something that wasn't entirely safe to just talk about with anybody. So, once I've kind of gotten this plan going for myself, where I've been watching certain people, listening to them, it just intuitively, it resonated. It was just like, okay, yes, this is what I've been thinking, and someone's saying it out loud. So that's fantastic. And I feel like I've got a kinship now with a group of people that are kind of my tribe now. Even though it is a cyber tribe, it's still people that I know when I'm speaking to them about this, I understand. Or they're speaking to me about it, I understand. And it's just, that has been a huge addition to my life. That has really added to my life. Yeah. It's so much nicer than feeling on the outside looking in and going, whoa, nobody else kind of talks about this, or nobody else really wants to hear too much about this, or they think it's like, woo, way out there. When for me, it was like, it was kind of like, Marie, you gotta hear about this because this is coming, right? So for the protective part of me and the maternal part of me wanted to protect people and wanted to kind of warn them, hey, if this happens, this could happen or that could happen. And when people don't want to hear about it, or they want to stay in that, cocoon that they're in, it's a balancing act. It really is a balancing act of, if it's okay to you start going through this. Is it okay to talk about this with somebody? Now that I've embraced it more because of this movement, and because of all, folks like yourself and Charlie and Sasha and Cyrus and all the people I've talked to, and Pastor Henry Hildebrand, I just feel like I've embraced it. It doesn't matter anymore, which is really nice to come to that place where it's my truth and people agree with me or they don't. It's difficult if it's someone close to me. I realized that this is where I need to stand. I need to stand in, as Sasha would say, I need to stand in the Christed light. I need to stand in my flame. There's no other option for me. So I've embraced that fully, and I feel very grounded in that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh, I feel you on that. Because I think that that's been, you really spoke to how I've been feeling too recently. Like, okay, look, I've accepted this. And I think that that's the resistance, is that we don't want to accept that evil exists on our planet. So many heart-centered folks just can't even conceive of the evil that happens, and the corruption, and politicians having alternative plans and things in place. Like, it's so difficult to even imagine that that could be happening, and yet that is the truth. Like, and so when I started to wake up to it, it was like, oh, I just don't want this to be true, but I don't get to manipulate reality that way. I get to decide if I want this to be true any longer. And then as I kind of moved into that boat and grounded into that, I realized how essential it actually was to then stand in my christened light and to say, look, this is happening. And it's like what you said, your motherly instinct. Like, I'm coming to the place now, and I'm curious on what you would say to this, where it's like, we're all watching a movie. I think on some level, we've all agreed that our reality is a projection of our mental status, or what we think to believe to be real is what we see. We've all agreed collectively that war exists, poverty exists, all of these terrible things exist. Nobody necessarily wants them, at least the people in my circles, but we've kind of accepted that that's the way the world is, right? Like, oh, that's just the way the world is. But we have yet to actually own the fact that we're creating that on some level. And so now it's like, in sharing on social and in these conversations, I'm like, all right, guys, like, we're all watching a movie. It's a projection of what we believe. Okay. And if my movie is, Trump and Q and New World Order stuff is South, and there was a, communist agenda and all this stuff was coming at us, if that's the movie I'm watching, and it's bringing me peace, even though it has altered me, like, it has changed my perceptions, it's changed my mind stuff. On the other side of that, I can see the light, I can see the love, I can see the community, the cyber community, that wow, because we've all accepted and we've all know this is happening, and we've all agreed on some level we're going to do whatever we can to expose it. That's the movie I'm watching, and I like it, and it brings me peace. Now, if you're watching another movie that you like and that brings you peace, then God bless you. But the part that's difficult, I think, for a lot of people is how, if I'm watching this movie, all of these people over here that are watching, let's say the Biden movie, are really like aggressive. And I have to really be careful, because I don't want to be aggressive around this information. I just want to really be like, look, this is what's happening. This is what I believe to be true. I like this movie. We all get to go to whatever movie we want to go to, right? But the part that really I think is interesting for us is that I really do want other people to come over here, but I do it from a place of like love and like, wow, look at the world we can create if we really do get rid of this corruption. And that's kind of what I'm in the middle of right now, is like the psychological warfare of like, I'm not trying to change your mind. I respect you, but at the same time, like, I really do believe this is true. And as a leader in my community, and you have a profession around this, like, I believe that what I'm saying could at least be heard, just hear it out. But it's that resistance that most people just don't want to go to. And then they just label you as being a crazy woo-woo, white supremacist or something like that. I don't know if there was anything in there that you could pull.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I call it the Great Divide.
Okay. There it is.
And it is, we do live in a dual reality. And divide is just getting greater. And I think what we're seeing is the shift in people moving, we're coming to the truth. And as we come to the truth, some of us are pulling in, some of us are pulling away. And we've never been so divided. So I totally understand what you say, what you're talking about and what you've been saying. And I thought you said that very well, by the way. You really painted a nice picture for people. And I think it's difficult for people, let's say, on one side to accept, let's say, the side we're on. And I really don't even want to put sides to it, but I know that's what's happening. Because I think we have been so programmed and so entrenched in the programming that there's already a decision that that is not true. That's a conspiracy. Those ideas are way out. You need to get back to reality. And there's not an openness there. And there may not even be a trusting, inner knowing or trusting of intuition, telepathy, these kinds of higher chakra functioning, because there's a comfort in just staying, kind of within the lower chakras, just like staying in my comfort zone, not thinking too much for myself, listening to what's being told to me and accepting that as the truth, when we know that, everything that's said to us could be anything. I mean, so little of it is probably the truth, unless we really find that within ourselves. So you mentioned, how do I know that for myself? Is I feel that in inner knowing, I feel that intuition, and I feel that, I would call it more of an inner knowing, where it's like I hear something and I go, that feels true. That feels true with me. It resonates with me. I do think we're in a divide where we've got people awakening and we've got people still sleepwalking. And people that are sleepwalking are not open to seeing what's happening on the other side. And they're being told constantly by the media that this is crazy stuff and don't listen to these people. These people are in a cult, a Q cult, when we know the Q movement. It's just a peace movement that's been around. I think it started back in the 1960s and it's just been growing. And it sort of shuts down any conversation, because it's already been painted as a person that thinks that way is either racist or Trumpist. Trumpist, I don't think that's a word, but they're Trump followers, they're racist, they're conspiracy theorists, they're all of these things. And once you label something, you can't have a conversation about it anymore. Once you label something and you've judged it, there is no more dialogue about it. And I agree. I feel the same way as you. I want to have an open dialogue with someone about these kinds of ideas, but I feel like that gets shut down. And I've had to kind of move almost away from that and just say to myself, just live and breathe your truth. And other people will see that. And everybody's on their own journey. And if they, resonate with that and they come on board, that's great. And if they don't, that's where they're meant to be. At the same time, having said that, I do feel a responsibility to try to get people to, give information or embody that myself, so that people can at least have the possibility of, going, oh, I never thought about that, or maybe I should look that up, or maybe I should research that. I do think it's important to bring people on board. I know that we can't force people on board. And, the greatest blessing I have had recently, Marie, is I don't watch TV and I don't watch the news. So unless somebody tells me what zone we're in for COVID, I have no idea. And yeah, I just feel healthy and happy, and because I'm not constantly being pulled into that narrative. And that's a lower frequency narrative. It's definitely a lower astral narrative. And I try really hard to stay, out of it, just be concerned, look at, for other people's comfort levels and their safety, stay apart from them and do those things, but not be just caught up in it. That's something you would do for anybody, for health reasons at this time when there's cold and flu and all of that kind of stuff. So I just really try to stay focused on what I'm doing and hope that it has an impact on somebody else.
It's so powerful, because it does. I do hope that it has a positive impact, but what I've found is that it actually has, it ignites people's fear so much that then the association then is, I'm afraid of her, or, and so that's been something that I've been trying to sort through, because it's certainly not my intention to hurt anyone or to bring fear to anyone. And I think a lot of us in this movement, because our language is like sometimes intense, because we're waking up to things and we're like, wow, this is actually playing out in real life. Like, oh my gosh. So perhaps, there might be a language that will, or a sentence that will offend somebody. And that's not the intention, but the offending is happening not to you, but to your ego. And that's been a little bit tricky for me, because on some level I feel like, oh gosh, please don't misunderstand, but I can't control that. And that's the other thing. And in terms of like a therapist, I don't know how, if I was coming to you as a
Yes.
client, like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Because now all these people that have loved me, and here I am, like this teacher, I'm a yoga instructor and a coach, and I've been telling them all these things. And now they think that like, that I've been brainwashed and all of this. And I know that that's not true. And I know that where I'm going with this is authentic and pure and about the love. So gratefully, I do know that. However, there's still that, like, we don't even talk about it anymore. But at this point, it's like, I can feel that, and my heart goes out to those people. And I'm kind of like on the edge of like, well, how to do anything, because they're so upset about it that at some point there really is nothing you can do other than, I guess, keep praying and trusting and knowing that everyone's on their own journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, beautifully said. I can relate to that for sure, especially being a therapist. I do remember the moment I shared something about Donald Trump, and it probably did take me about 3 minutes to hit the send button because I mean, I kind of look at, I respect what he's doing a great deal. I look to God first. So, and I'm a firm believer that God uses who God needs to use to make something happen. And I do believe that Donald Trump is one of those people. And so, knowing that there were all of these judgments about him and people watching the news, and that's all that the news ever said from what I heard from people, seeing as I don't watch it, would tell me all the time it was always about Donald Trump and what Donald Trump did, and Donald Trump did this and Donald Trump did that, and it's total programming to just program that hate into people without even knowing what this person has done. And I know for myself, Marie, when I've had conversations with people and I've said, well, do you know some of the things he's done? I think you like some of the things he's done. You don't want to know the things he's done, even though these things are, in my opinion, they are Christed things, right? Trying to remove child pornography, let's say, from the internet, trying to stop human trafficking and sex trafficking, trying to rescue children. Those are things I just feel like everybody would want to have happen. But this other narrative of hate speech about Donald Trump has really created a huge, huge divide. So I know what you mean, because I had a reputation on social media, and I knew when I pressed that button, something was going to happen. I didn't know what it was, but what I did find that was interesting is I didn't get a lot of attacks. I got a lot of quietness. I got a lot of quietness from people who, might have said things before about things I posted. There was a lot of quietness. And then I started actually finding that people on I guess that were more drawn to this perspective, they started befriending me. And I felt like I kind of moved over when I really didn't mean to move over. I just meant to be myself, and whoever was coming on board and whoever didn't want to come on board, I have no judgment about that. But I did feel that happened, and I actually ended up leaving my practice, my place of practice for the last 7 years. I can take my practice anywhere. I left my place of practice for the last 7 years because of this issue, and it was about the buy-in of the COVID, to the point where I felt my work would be compromised. And so I just said, I can't do it. I can't give to this energy. I was hesitant to say what I believed, but I put a little bit of my truth out there, and I ended up leaving that environment. So I like I said, I have my practice. I can have my practice anywhere, and I still have another, physical space for my practice, cyberspace for my practice, but I had 2 places, and I actually ended up walking away from that. And the feeling of how the relationships I had were really good with the people there, and how, you know, the client, everything was great in the environment, the clients, everything. And of course the clients are with me. That's not an issue. Just to think that it all came down to this thing, that I don't see this the way you see this. And I can't like wipe everything as soon as I touch it. You know, it almost feels like as a therapist, like I'm going to be going to somebody because I have OCD or something. Like there's certain precautions, but then there's, you know, so it was getting too restrictive, and then the mask and all of that stuff. And it was just, I just ended up deciding I either embody this truth or I don't. And so I left. Yeah. And you know what? Since then, I've been even more busy. I don't know if it's because I left that energy behind, but I have been really drawing people in, and more people that feel this way because they feel there's a safety in being able to speak about this with someone like myself.
Yeah.
So I've kind of, I've kind of gotten both sides going in some strange sort of way. I don't promote any one thing in my practice. So I'm extremely accepting of whatever side you're on. I hear all kinds of people talking to me in practice about the opposite of what I believe in. And that's okay. I'm a non-partial, like I'm a neutral. For them, it's number one that I be a safe place for them, and I'm neutral, and I just reflect back and accept and ask questions. And sometimes people change, not because of that, or maybe they've thought about it afterwards, but sometimes they say, oh, I never really thought of that. That's kind of weird that we're doing this, but there's this happening. Or sometimes we confront the hypocrisy a little bit if they want to go there.
Right.
I know what you mean. I actually made that decision, and I've made a decision. I'm only practicing in places that allow me to practice fully with my own values and beliefs.
Wow, that's so powerful. And what you said there about like really embodying my truth, like this is my truth. And there are repercussions you could say to that. Like if you're going to say, look, this is what I believe, then you're going to have to make changes in your life. Like that's part of what this is. And I think that that's happening more and more now as we continue to approach whatever we're approaching on the 21st, you know, whatever is happening, we're being asked to stand more and more in our truth. And that doesn't mean that the person in front of you has to be fully aligned, but that also means that it doesn't need to be an attack. There needs to be a level of mutual respect. So I love what you just said about, like, you know, people sometimes even change their minds, even though that might not be your intention. It's not necessarily to make them change their mind, but just by you embodying where you're at with this, it just reflects that possibility. And that's really why I got involved too. Like I just wanted to support people because I felt like, oh my God, when people wake up to trafficking, like when people realize what happens to babies, like when people realize this, they're going to need me to be ready. So like, that's really why I went there. And then, you know, having to say, like, I also made big changes. I've lost clients, you know, I've gotten new ones, but big relationships in my life changed because of what I believe to be really a very strong programming and fear-based intention and being so locked into that they can't even, nobody would even talk to me about it. And that to me was kind of difficult, but at the same time, like, okay, well, this is part of what these times are about. And it's just about keeping myself aligned and continuing to embody and not to question myself. I think that in the beginning of this, not so much now, but I know that people listening to this might be going through this, like, have I lost my mind?
Yeah.
Like here I am, like everybody who loved me, who's, you know, paid money to be with me, my family, everybody thinks I've lost my mind. Have I?
Right. Yes. How interesting. And you're feeling like you're finding your mind.
Right? But there's something psychological there too. I mean, I find that all of this has been very much in alignment to my studies in yoga and in A Course in Miracles, which is psychotherapy essentially, which is a
Right.
spiritual connection, is the healing that we're all looking for. Like that's,
Yeah.
if that's not aligned, and so many people think that they are aligned, they're religious or they're yogi, but it's all light and love, that level of practicing. But
Yes.
there needs to be some level of accepting the fact that that there has been a separation, that there is evil intention in some humans that are so separated from their creator. And that's where saying, look, I haven't lost my mind is really important, and why I'm so grateful for the Course in Miracles and for my grounding. But I did have some major dark nights of the soul, and I'm sure some of you guys watching have felt that way too, that like, wow, parents, people called me up and said, don't talk about this. People only want you to talk about the love. Don't go here. But what was it that I needed to do? Like I felt so drawn into it. And I really do believe it was a spiritual journey, another layer of
Yeah.
embodying who I really am, and learning how to stand, like you said, in the light, which Sasha shares with us so beautifully, like to stay in that. There's no other decision but that, and then whatever will be, will be.
Yeah, I love what you said about lost the connection with their creator. And I think that's very true. I'm not the kind of person who thinks that someone's born evil. I think that evil things have happened to people and they lose that, they lose that connection. And then it becomes easier to do more evil things because there's no accountability for creation or for the creator. So I really like that you said that. And I think what we're really seeing is we're seeing a separation from people who are ascending and people who are kind of holding on to this dimensional reality. And when you said I felt pulled or I felt called, that's intuitively that came up for me. That pulling is that you do embody the Christed light and you are ascending. You're being pulled to ascend, whereas other people might not be fully ready to do that. And as you know, as you mentioned, the ego, that the ego is what keeps us in that karmic wheel of just repeating ourselves and repeating ourselves and repeating our lives without ascending to that light. And I really believe that's what we're seeing happen, is we're seeing those beings that are really connected to creation are pulling away. And the other beings are wondering why they're pulling away. And there's a lot of emotion attached to that, and like you said, people actually saying to you, stop talking about that, stop saying that. When have we ever lived in a reality where people have said, don't say that, don't talk about that? And I've had that experience too, Marie. I had somebody reach out to me and say, stop talking about that.
Yeah,
You've got to stop talking about that. And for me, it just kind of bounces off because I feel this protection around me and a real sense of strength in what I'm doing. And so I usually just look at it as this person's not ready, this person's not coming, and this person has free will and choice. And if I do something that makes them think they want to, want to learn a little bit more or even, move over to, I don't even want to say move over to the other side, but they want to know more, and they want to themselves embody what that light and what's happening. And that's great. At the same time, it's almost like it just would rather you stop than have to even open that door. And that door, I think, is open for everybody in their own way, in their own time.
yeah.
But that's really what I think we see happening, is we see the people that are really connected moving away. I talked about this actually. The video is going to come out today with Charlie Freak, and we talked about the rapture. And this is kind of what we were talking about, is the rapture, is those people that are deciding, those people that are choosing life and choosing to step out of the samsara, the karmic wheel, and the ego-led reality, the ego-based reality that makes people identify themselves with that and not the deeper part of themselves and who they really are.
Mm-hmm.
And
Totally.
so interesting that this is coming up today as well.
Well, I think because it is the story of our time, and it's just, I feel so grateful to be having this conversation with you, because it is happening. And I think that's what's stalling a lot of folks is that we've intellectualized so much. It's the stuff in the movies. We've separated ourselves so much from our divine embodiment, and to know this information and to still walk down the street with a smile on your face, like it's a spiritual journey. It is spiritual. And so that's why everybody in this community has some level of spiritual understanding. As Charlie says, there's some moving out of the base chakras. I love that you brought that up earlier. Like we don't need, we've been spending so much time in survival and competition and trying to get ahead and all of those things, that literally to come into our heart and to let our heart open and to clear this out so that we can actually communicate. And then people saying don't do that is such an obvious example of the need that they have, and that the need that they want to fulfill within themselves, but aren't necessarily sure how to tap, from my perspective, because of the emotional implications of how difficult that is emotionally, to accept the fact that there is trafficking, accept the fact that you've been eating garbage since you were born, accept the fact that you've been lied to by the people that you love and respect. That emotional healing is deep, and the freedom that comes from that is immense. And that's why I feel Spirit called me into it, because I needed to go through that alchemical process. And I believe every single human needs to do that for themselves. And yes, if you don't want to do it, and I was in a conversation with a woman from Australia, and she's like, but they're going to go through another 26,000 years on this wheel of samsara. And I went, oh God, let's hope not. But if that's the case, then so be it. But what you said about free will is that, like, this is free will. And if someone like you or someone like me and all of the beautiful humans right now that are out there saying, look, guys, this is what we've come to. It's fine. We're healing it. There are people working towards it. That's why we're putting our energy in this direction, because we understand energy. We know how the more you put towards light and love, the more you'll receive. But there's no bypassing this to get there. We cannot, we've got to stop intellectualizing that I get this stuff, I get it, like that. We need to go through that process. And I think that that's why I was so drawn to it, and why I'm so drawn to people like yourself to have these deeper conversations, because psychologically there is a lot of like, have I lost my mind? This is the exact opposite of everything I have accepted to be true in my reality. And for sure, you're going to be mad at me. For sure, you're going to be like, what are you talking about? You need to be quiet. But that's yours. And that's what we're trying to say is like, hey, look at that. Let's look at this. Let's see, what is that about? And because it really is, I think everyone must go through the eye of the needle on their own. There's those of us going, you can do it. We did it. And because we did it, you can. But it really is about every person taking up his or her cross. That's what I believe that line is about. Take up your cross, take up your responsibility in this, pull your thread out, because all of us have been plugged into this matrix, and we need to unplug, and we are the only ones that can unplug ourselves. At least that's how I see it.
Absolutely. And so many people are so deeply entrenched in the lie, and there's so much deception that it has become truth, right? And I also like what you said, Marie, when you were talking about how people can hear it and they can intellectualize it, and then they think they have it, right? I mean, how many times I've looked at that's such a cool concept. I love that. Oh, I got that one. Yep, that's cool. But until you practice that, as you use the word embody, and I've used the word embody during this podcast, until you start to really practice it, shift doesn't happen. It stays in that intellectual wheel. And I think you're making the distinction between the truthers who are the love and light truthers and the truthers who are the warriors. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's kind of what, so there's staying in that, yes, I love this, there's the love and the light, and that's fantastic. And let's keep that, don't talk about anything negative, don't talk about, things that, let's not attract that into our reality. And at the same time, we are in a time right now where that's not enough.
Yes.
Love and the light is great. We not need to get it out there now. We need to be the love and the light warriors, right? And we even see this divide in the truth community and the spiritual community. That's you can't go there. That's a bad place to be. That's a negative place to be. when it's the place we need to be to actually embody that light and that love and make it and bring it out into the world. It's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to do it. It's another thing to go out on the street and sit with someone who's homeless and talk to them and buy them a sandwich. And it is to walk past them and say, wow, we really have hunger, starvation, or homeless crisis in our community. So yeah, I understand what you're saying, and it's really interesting to see that and to see that divide within even that community itself. And I have witnessed that. I've seen a few people that I've really followed, and I really I don't want to say admired, because I'm really trying to get out of the idolatry mindset myself. That is a big thing for me is, yes. Oh yeah, I love this speaker. Let's go to California and see them. And I love doing that. And, of course, all the focus is on somebody and more and more away from the creator, right? As you're saying, pulling into with the creator, that there's been so much deception to lead us into idolatry of, pop culture and pop stars and singers and all of these things, and away from our connection to that. So I'm trying not to say admired, but all of these people that I did follow and just was always like awe of what they said. I see now that they're also separated in this, and I'm shocked sometimes, because there were people like, oh yeah, I love this person. I love people whose concepts I use in therapy. Their concepts are brilliant. I would continue to use them in therapy, but who have put out information that feels like a warning against warriors.
Yes.
And it's like, oh my goodness, what happened? Like, what happened to, the values and the beliefs that we valued as that spiritual community? Because they're not the same. They're not the same when you're embracing something that feeds the energy of, let's use one of Sasha's terms, because I do not want to assume that this is my own, of cultism, of sacrifice, of child sacrifice. If you're going to embrace the energy of, killing babies to term, or you're going to embrace that energy, there's a contradiction there. There's a contradiction there. And so that in itself is, I think some of the hypocrisy has been interesting for me. Yeah. Because I know these are wonderful people, and somehow they're caught in the middle of two things. Yes. And right now, I don't think there's a luxury of being in the middle of anything. For someone who comes from the gray area, it's hard for me to say that, but really, you're standing here or you're standing here, and you can't be like, I'm here, but I believe we can, like, take late-term abortions and kill babies, or, for lack of a better word of saying that, or, continue to think that this sacrificing isn't going on, things like that. So yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic, to say the least.
Very deep. But I like how you say, like, we don't want to be the kind of people that choose sides, but this is one where it is black and white. Like, this is happening. This is happening, and we need to acknowledge it so that we can change it. And that's really the bottom line. I think that it's so important that, there are so many people that have great information and great tools and great ways of articulating. But for me, it was like I kept getting to a wall with that. I kept getting, and then when it started to get like those people were actually talking bad about Q or bad about Trump, it was like, whoa, there's something else that gets infused. And I think that that's what we see, is that even the best of intentions is not enough. Because if we're not actively, I'll use the word warrior, like focused on this and moving this further through all of the density, through all the darkness to the light, then the dark has a power. It does have a power. The mind is very powerful, as we learn. And if we're not training it, if we're not using it towards the light, it does get catapulted. And I kind of see it as like almost like layers. Like maybe we've gotten through those layers, and then we got all the way through. And for me, not speaking out, I felt like a fraud. I felt like here I was teaching about light and love and trying to sell my courses and do all of this stuff. but I wasn't talking about what was really happening within me, like within my reality, within what I was seeing. And I'm so far removed from it. So the people that are really stuck with like masks and the COVID narratives and things, like I thank goodness, I think that's been such a blessing, so that I could see those distinctions a lot
Yeah.
clearer, because I wasn't so wrapped into it. So my heart goes out to the people that are like, you don't even get it, like how difficult it is. We have to wear masks at Costco. And I'm like, well, why is Costco open and the family store down the street is closed?
Yeah.
Like, you start to question everything. I just started to question everything. And the minute I woke up to this narrative, I could see it everywhere. And then from that perspective, it was like, oh, okay, well, this is what it is. And some people are really holding on to the old. And this is all about waking up to the new.
Absolutely. And that terrifies some people. You know, they don't want that change. They don't even want you to change. So, and why change if you can't see why you're changing, right? Why are we changing when we don't know what we're changing to? So, yeah, 100%. It's so interesting. COVID narrative is wow. It's deep. And it's really difficult, and I'm sure you can agree with this, when you believe you're standing for freedom and sovereignty, and you're fighting for your children and these people to have freedom that don't know that, and they attack you for it. Why can't you just wear a mask, right? Why can't you just wear a mask with no understanding of what, not really wanting to hear what that understanding is either, just labeling it as, not caring about somebody else or being selfish, with no idea of the depth of intention. Stand up for your freedom. I will be courageous enough to walk into a supermarket and be the only person, everyone staring at you. I will do that for your freedom or for my children's freedom. And to then be judged for it, or be attacked for it, or be looked at as someone who's not taking this seriously, kind of thing. And it's really, the COVID narrative has gotten so deep that it's like people can't see the forest for the trees, right? Because everything comes back to COVID, and that's what it was designed to do. COVID was designed to be the marker for everything else. Once COVID was established, then we can do the vaccines, then we can do the tracking and tracing. We can force people into believing. We can create a narrative so that people feel like they can't embrace these things. They'll embrace a vaccine, doesn't matter if it has a chip in it, as long as it's going to help with the COVID. They'll embrace tracking and tracing. They'll give their names and numbers willingly at stores and restaurants, without really looking at the bigger picture, where this is going and why is there tracking and tracing and vaccines for something that has such a small margin of harm to people, when there's so many other things out there causing a lot of harm.
One of my favorite things here in Mexico, in the town that I live in, is everybody, rides these little motos. So they're like on the motos, not wearing helmets, but wearing masks. It's like,
yes, yeah. There's a great example.
Like it just, I'm like scratching my head going, you could really fall off that thing and hurt yourself. The mask is not going to help you in that case, Yeah. But the thing with the COVID too is just that, like, even, the testing for it is so just horrific. If you can catch it, right, by being within 6 feet of somebody, if you can catch it, like, why not just take a swab of the inside? Why do you have to stick that thing in? So it really is an attack. And that's why I think we tend to call ourselves warriors. We are being attacked by these forces in any way, which form is possible. They want to chip you. They want to know. I mean, like, I used to think to myself, like, when I didn't believe any of this was true, I would say to my friends, like, what do they care about me for? Like, what does it matter? And now that I actually had a conversation on Instagram with this really sweet 17-year-old gal who's like, and she's like calling herself a truther, and she's a yoga teacher, and she wrote me and she's like, will you do this? And I said, great. And so we get on and we start talking, and she talks about how she was injured by vaccines when she was younger, and she had to ask her parents. She'd say, look, I don't want any more of these shots. They make me feel terrible. And all
Mm.
of this stuff, so powerful, her testimony. And, you know, we said COVID in the video, and I said, well, you know, certificate of vaccination identification. That's what this is about. And
Yep.
it was a 19-year plan, and this is what's happening. And we need to look at,
Yes.
you know, the organizations. I said something about, you know, Red Cross and UN. Like, yes, they started with intentions for good. You know, I think that's what you said earlier in the show, is that no one's born evil. I really believe that too. I think we learn evil and then we justify evil and get normalized to it. So we don't
Yes.
necessarily think it's evil anymore. So you have all these good people in the world watching, you know, vampire movies for entertainment. Well, I've never seen anything like that, even before any of this, because what would be the function of that? What would be my purpose in doing that? Well, this video with this Instagram gal got taken down. It was just totally taken down. I went, oh, wow. Like, that was my first actual like experience of being censored. And I thought, why take it down? Like, that's what I want people to start to question, of like, why are they, who's taking it down?
Yes.
How do they have that power? And why are they doing that if this is not true? And they don't
Yeah.
want people to know about this. If, let's say it is all a hoax, it's all a conspiracy. So then fine, we're allowed to then prove that it's not true, instead of putting energy towards taking down the ones that are saying, look, this is resonating. And now we're seeing it. It makes no sense that people are riding around not wearing a helmet, but wearing a mask. So it's not about COVID. It's about fear of the government, you know, giving you a ticket or taking you to jail, which they have no right to do. You know, it's like saying you have to wear, you know, this, or you have to wear that. It's getting to a place where it really is, you have to be the one walking in. Like, I'm the same. I'm walking in, people are looking at me, taking my kids out. You know, we're not afraid of this thing. And I actually got word that there are some people very close to me that, not so much anymore, but that got COVID. And I thought to myself, you know, not to be disrespectful to anyone who has had this, and if it's a real thing and got tested for it and it was a positive, whatever. What is your health like? I think the bigger question is, how are we taking care of our immunity every single day? And if you are drinking alcohol every day and eating crap food and really, really stressed out and watching the mainstream media, you are being attacked. And so you are vulnerable to something like this. And we need to be less and less vulnerable. We need to be more and more empowered and take ownership and do the hard things, like stop eating the junk, or start, taking supplements or whatever it is. Stop drinking the coffee. That for me is the hardest thing. I love my coffee, but are you having it? I'm drinking cacao. I have a little cacao. I'm trying to, shift out, but I feel you. That one's a big one for me. But, changing my diet has been huge, and all of the things that we can do. I think that's really what I want. I've been starting to do, and that's why I know that there's truth here for me and for my family, because so much good has come of it. So much good.
Yeah.
Even though it's been difficult, it's taught me how to stand deeper and deeper into the truth, and using Christ as an example. Like, using it, if there was that figure 2,000 years ago, like, what would he do? Sit around and be like, oh, sorry for all the lepers, that really sucks to be them? No, he went. He showed up when it was difficult, and he healed, and he talked to women, and he talked to Zacharias, and he did the things that the community thought he was crazy for doing. But that's what it is to be a light worker. I mean, that is what this is. And Charlie says this often, and I have said it too, but that this is about us really and truthfully having this spiritual journey home. And we're so loved. We have infinite possibilities to do so. But right now, so many of us are like, oh my God, I think I'm going to do it right now. I think I'm going to do it right now. And wow, if this is really happening, oh my gosh. And I feel it, and I can see it happening in my reality. And it's, wow, what a beautiful experience, and such a privilege and such an honor. And that's really what this is about. It's talking to people. It's sharing this information. It's trying to say, look, try not to attack me, but look at why you feel like you need to attack. Let's look at that first,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Really well put. I'll share with you that I read a book about the rapture from someone who did quite a lot of research about the Bible, but would out a book where you could read it kind of in a succinct way. And I was really into the book of Revelation. So I read this book called The Rapture. And this person, I really trusted them. They had so much research. When they would talk about stuff, they had papers everywhere. And they actually are not, they didn't survive, so they're not here today. The information this person had was really great. And so I read this book, and I'm reading it, and I'm reading it, and then it came to a part where it said, well, if you're reading this book, you didn't make it to heaven. And I was like, I put the book down, and I sat back, and I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't make it to heaven. Really affected me. I can even feel it when I say it, that I didn't make it to heaven. And it just stayed with me and stayed with me and stayed with me. And I thought, wow, I really do want to get this right. I didn't make it, so I want to get this right. And I thought to myself, like you, when you first realize the depth of deception and corruption, nobody wants to think of the world this way. Nobody wants to think of the world this way. I did not want to think of this world this way. I tried to look at the things that were around me that were good and focus on those things. So nobody does. But when that happened, coupled with what I read, I was like, I'm in hell. I'm in hell. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in hell. And I'm like, no, I can't be in hell. This is just and so regardless of whether that's the case or not, I'm in the trials of it, back in the trials of it. And somehow this, Black nobility, the Black Pope, all of these Illuminati members that have, of it as an octopus's head, where yes, we have those good systems and we have those good people, but then we also had, the opposite, right? The dualistic nature. We also had the people that wanted to take us over and take over our divinity and take over God's role, that all have their tentacles in all of our systems, our education system, our health system, our political system. And now we're just seeing how far it's growing. Now it's like we're not just have the tentacles in, we have their full, the full legs in there. And now we're waking up to criminality as seemingly, out of proportion, or corruption. There's always some corruption, out of proportion with the good systems that we have built. So I'm in no way trying to say that we aren't good people. Somehow we have been infiltrated to such a degree by people who do have a nefarious agenda for us that it kind of felt like, hey, maybe this could be hell. Or maybe we've allowed hell we've projected hell, and we're faced with the hell that we've projected. And I know these are very strong terms I'm using, so I want to use them as symbolic and metaphorically as well. But we have, projected, as you said, we projected this into our world. We have created this. Yeah. We have permissioned this. We have turned our eye on certain things, and we've permissioned a lot of this to come into play. And now we're faced with it.
Yes.
And I just remember reading that, and then all this started happening. I'm like, wow, maybe I am. Maybe this is the trial tribulation place that I need to go before I get it right? Wow. And I don't profess to say that I get everything right. All those things you said, I'm faced with the coffee, I love coffee. I'm faced with eating animals and the energy of eating animals. I'm faced with my own challenges. But as you say, going into this, or being, having that right in front of you, saying, this is not what I choose. What do I choose? Starts to make you reevaluate other things in your life, what you want to put into your mind, what you want to put into your body, what you want, frequency that you want to resonate at. Do you want to be expansive, or do you want to be constrictive? And that's been a beautiful unfolding. I have to say, no, I'm just going to think about that later. No. You're going to think about it right now, because it's happening right now, as you say. And because now it doesn't seem like there's a later. Yeah. Kind of like, even if there is a later, I don't feel like there's a later. So let's get this right? Because I do want to ascend, and I do want to rise, and I do want that eternal life. And so, there's things I have to do. And And like you said, it when you said it's a beautiful spiritual journey because you have this choice. Is this it? Is this it? Well, I don't know. Are you ever ready for is this it? If it is, I know I want it.
Oh, wow, that was such a beautiful. Did you see me? I was just like, yeah, that was so.
Thank you.
Wow, everything you just said was so potent and so powerful and so inspiring. So I trust that everybody listening really could just receive that. It was so authentic. I wrote something recently, an article around, I've already been to hell, haven't you? So it's like
Right.
in alignment with what you're sharing, that like, we've been trained to think these things happen later, when maybe that's one of the biggest lies of all, that
Yeah.
maybe this decision between heaven and hell is one that we must make every moment of every day. That
Right.
with the choices that we make on what we want to frequent, like what kind of frequency we want to live at, what kind of vibe do we want to have, and how do the things that we put in our body support our intention, which is eternal life, which is loving consciousness in action, and living in an environment and in a reality where the children can roam free, and you don't for a second think anything terrible would happen. You just, they're so loved, we're so in like mind with mankind, that that's what we've created in our reality. And so for me, that's what you're essentially saying, is like, that could be happening right now. I believe it's happening right now. I see it happening in my life. I see the people that I'm attracting now into my reality. I see the projects that are being born of this ability to say, wow, I've been in hell all this time. I've struggled. I've been sick. I've had cancer. I've had surgeries. I've had miscarriages. I've been so sick. How many of us get to our 30s, 40s, and 50s and can say, I've never been sick? It's all been free sailing. Something is happening here with what's happening. And what you were speaking about in terms of the tentacles, and how it's just infiltrated every avenue of our existence. It's unacceptable now to just say, well, that's the way the world is, because it's unproportionate now. We are so far out of bounds with our divine nature. That's the bottom
Yeah.
line. We're out of bounds and we've accepted it. Even wearing the mask is a Satanist practice. Like, I said to a friend, even before I knew that, she goes, I just don't like wearing this mask. I said, because it's dark. It feels dark. It doesn't feel like it's helping what they're saying it's supposed to be helping. And everyone's just doing it because of fear, because we've been programmed to be like, well, this is hell, but actually it's heaven, because at least we can eat all this food and we have all these conveniences. But that's not heaven. And people like you and me and a lot more of us are saying, no, guys, we've seen the light. and the bliss, and I have tasted the joy of divine communion, and it is not what you take at church. It's not that. It's a very different thing. And I'm so invested in having more and more of that, because the more I have of it, wow, the more I feel like myself, the more safety I feel, the more I can walk through the grocery store and be humble and express love and be the light in the middle of the darkness, because that is my nature. And that's what I've contracted this life around. That's what you've contracted. That's what we said we were going to do. We said we were going to do this. And here it is happening in such a beautiful way. 2020, the year of vision, clear vision. And I just feel so inspired to continue acknowledging the hell that we've been living in, so that we can step more and more fully into heaven on earth, which is the goal of the Course in Miracles. And I want to give it back to you with this. The Course speaks about this, that in the Bible, it says that Adam fell asleep, and my son's name is Adam. So I really feel a connection to like humanity, like the truth.
Yes.
Yeah. So like, Adam fell asleep, but he has yet to wake up. And so there's never been a great awakening, but there will be one. And I paraphrase that from the Course in Miracles. So for me, when I started seeing hashtag Great Awakening, I was like, excuse me, like, that's exciting. Is that really happening? And that upset so many people in my community. Like, oh, you're so ridiculous, like the Great Awakening and all that. And that to me was another indication that I was onto something, because I take this work literally. Like, it is about personal evolution and personal embodiment. And it's not about from the outside in, it's an inside out journey. And that's what's happening for so many of us, is that we're learning how to embody this. It's not easy. It's not easy to say, I love Trump. You had 3 minutes of a pause there, knowing that your life was really never going to be the same. And mine is too. Like the minute I went out, the first post I did, like the big one that actually said Trump's name, like I had been eluding. I got in bed for 2 hours with the fever.
Oh, wow.
It was, it was like,
Oh, wow.
I think this,
Body's speaking to you.
yeah, it was a burn through. It was like a biological upgrade, because if I had not had that fever, I know I would have immediately gone to delete it. I was that afraid. But it's about moving through the fear to the love. And anytime we have an opportunity to acknowledge our fear and act for love, not the fear, that's how we know we're on track. And it's not easy, but it's absolutely 100% worth it and essential. Like you said, it's now. It's now. We need to start doing these things now. I don't think we have that much more time, because again, the agenda got just so dark so fast. And so like, wow, it almost happened. Like Charlie says, like if what's her name would have won in 2016, we wouldn't have had this time to wake up. And so many have. And so that's definitely one of the blessings of Trump's legacy and so much. Do you think it's all going to come out? Let me leave you with this. Is this going to be like so obvious at some point? People are going to be like, oh, Elle, thank you so much. Or I'm so sorry, I was such a jerk. Do you think it's going to happen?
You know what? I think it is all going to come out, because the truth always comes out. You know what? I got to tell you, Marie, I take no comfort in, I'm not trying to be right.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, for some of the people who are going to be prosecuted, I don't, some people are really excited and happy. Oh my gosh, I don't feel any of that. I really, especially maybe it's being a therapist and just my personality, I feel like those people didn't have a chance when they were children. They were born into this cult, they were born into the dynasties, or they were born into the brotherhoods, and they were already, being compromised. They were already themselves being victims of that system. And I take no pleasure in seeing them hurt. But I do know that we cannot let that continue. We cannot live in a world where, we don't trust anything. And we have to be looking behind us to see if our child's behind us. We cannot. We do need to remove that energy. But I take no pleasure in that. And if it all comes to play that it is obvious and all of that, I'll be happy for the people who maybe thought it wasn't, because there's going to be some great things waiting for them that we do not yet see.
Yes.
So maybe we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that was a beautiful ending. Oh yeah. I hope it gets obvious. I share that sentiment though. Like, it's not like a joy that, yeah, they got that guy, because again, what you said is so true. And I think we really need to remember that they didn't have a chance. Like, this is such a sad story. And I just pray to the good Lord that we're on the ending really of this story, and we can just remove it and heal from its emotional impact in the years to come, and continue to embody our christened nature, and experience more community and more joy and just more togetherness. I think that's what I'm missing with all this polarization and all this. Like, I just want us all to be together again. And I know that has to do with alignment in our thinking, but it does take, we need to be cleared of these programs, and we need to, hopefully, like you said, the truth will be known, and it will be easier for us to unpack and remove some of this.
Yeah, for sure. You said that so beautifully. Very nice way to wrap up today's podcast.
Thank you so much, Elle, for your time. I know that you are so busy, with all of the love and all of the therapy and all of the goodness that you provide for your community. And thank you for being with us today. I just love being with you. Thank you. I hope we do this again sometime. It was fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you so much, Marie. It was just a great conversation, and you're such a genuine person, and your light really shines through. And I had a really nice time speaking with you. And yeah, for sure, let's do it again. Let's do it again as we go through this journey. Let's stay on the path together.
I love it. Thank you so much, Elle. So much love to you. We're in touch. Namaste. Have a great
Namaste.
one. Bye for now.